Commander Vrax Tundar stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Alliance Training Academy, his 4 arms folded across his broad, armored chest. His reinforced exoskeleton gleamed under the artificial lights as he watched the newest batch of cadets file into the combat arena below. The massive viewing window gave him a perfect vantage point to survey what he considered the most pathetic collection of species ever admitted to the Alliance's elite military program. "You cannot be serious, Admiral," Vrax rumbled, his voice like gravel being crushed. "These are our future defenders. The fate of the 12 systems rests on their shoulders." Admiral Zol Pex, a slender, blue-skinned Altarian with 6 eyes arranged in a perfect hexagon, sighed. "Times have changed, Commander. The Alliance needs diversity of thought and physiology. Our enemies adapt, so must we. Diversity." Vrax spat the word like it was poison. "That tiny pink creature there, what is that? A juvenile Gortax? Some kind of hairless rodent?" Zolpex followed Vrax's pointing digit. "Ah, that would be one of our humans, Cadet Natasha Kovalev. From Earth." "Earth? That backwater dirtball that just discovered interstellar travel?" Vrax snorted, expelling air forcefully through his nasal slits. What could they possibly contribute except becoming easy targets? Look at her. No armor, no claws, not even a respectable set of fangs. She's practically transparent. Yet Earth was unanimously approved for Alliance membership last cycle, Zol replied, his tone diplomatic but firm. Their application tests were surprising. Vrax turned all 4 of his yellow eyes toward the Admiral. Surprising how? Their physical capabilities exceed expectations for their size and apparent fragility. And their problem-solving approaches are unconventional. Unconventional, Vrax repeated flatly. A polite term for primitive and chaotic. Zol's upper eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of mild irritation. "You've been assigned to oversee their combat training for the next rotation. Supreme Command believes your particular style of instruction will be beneficial." "My style?" Vrax let out a barking laugh that caused several junior officers nearby to flinch. "You mean my intolerance for weakness and incompetence? Your attention to detail and commitment to excellence," Zol corrected smoothly. "The assignment begins tomorrow. I suggest you review their preliminary assessments tonight." Vrax growled, a low rumbling sound that vibrated the metal floor beneath them. "This is punishment for the Denaxian incident, isn't it?" "Not at all," Zol replied, but his middle eyes narrowed slightly. "Though I would recommend against threatening to eat any of these cadets, regardless of their performance. The diplomatic incident with the Denaxians took 3 cycles to resolve. They were weak. Weakness should be culled. They were allies. And now, so are the humans." With a slight bow, Admiral Zol turned to leave. "Oh, and Vrax, try not to break this batch. The paperwork is extensive." Left alone, Vrax returned his gaze to the training floor, where the human female was now performing some kind of stretching routine. Her limbs bent in ways that made even his armored hide crawl with discomfort. Unnatural, disgusting. This assignment was clearly punishment. But Vrax Tundar did not fail. Ever. If Supreme Command wanted him to train these soft-skinned weaklings, he would train them. Most would quit. Some might die. But those who survived would be warriors. His mandibles clicked in anticipation. Perhaps this wouldn't be so boring after all. "Attention, maggots." The booming voice echoed through the training hall, causing several cadets to visibly jump. Natasha Kovalev maintained her position, back straight, eyes forward, just as she'd been trained at the Earth Military Academy. After 6 months in space, she was getting used to the various ways aliens could make human eardrums vibrate. The source of the voice stomped into view, and even Natasha had to suppress a reaction. She'd seen Chronaxians in the orientation materials, but in person, Commander Vrax was impressive. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with charcoal gray armored plates covering his massive frame and 4 muscular arms ending in clawed hands, He looked like someone had crossbred a rhinoceros with a praying mantis and then pumped the result full of steroids. "I am Commander Vrax Tundar," he announced, pacing before the assembled cadets. 37 combat tours, 212 confirmed kills, 6 Valor Stars, and now apparently a babysitter for the galaxy's most pitiful collection of sentient flesh. His yellow eyes scanned the formation, pausing briefly on each non-Chronaxian species. There were about 20 cadets in total, representing 12 different Alliance worlds. Natasha and David Park were the only humans. "For the next 60 rotations, you will eat when I say eat, sleep when I say sleep, and bleed when I say bleed. Some of you will fail. Most of you, actually." His mandibles clacked together with what sounded disturbingly like pleasure. "Those who survive will become warriors worthy of the Alliance emblem." David, standing 2 spots away from Natasha, swallowed audibly. She kept her eyes fixed straight ahead, though she could feel sweat beating at her temples. The gravity on the station was set to Alliance standard about 1.2 times Earth normal, and the temperature was kept warmer than humans found comfortable. Both were tolerable but draining over time. "We begin with basic combat assessment," Vrax announced. "Each of you will demonstrate your species' traditional fighting techniques against a training drone. This will establish your baseline in competence." A ripple of nervous movement passed through the formation. Natasha had studied Alliance combat protocols extensively before leaving Earth, but reading about them was entirely different from performing them in front of a legendary Chronaxian war hero who clearly despised her entire species. "Zorvan, you're first," Vrax barked, pointing to a tall, willowy cadet with iridescent skin. One by one, cadets stepped forward to face the training drone, a hovering, spherical device with multiple appendages that could adapt to test different combat styles. Some performed well, particularly the Grakians and Vorlex, species known for their martial traditions. Others were clearly scientists or engineers with minimal combat training, recruited for their technical expertise rather than fighting ability. Human Kovalev. "Step forward." Natasha's heart jumped into her throat, but her body moved automatically. 6 years in the Earth Military Academy had at least taught her how to respond to commands without hesitation. She stepped onto the mat, facing the drone as it hovered at eye level. "What is your combat specialization, human?" Vrax demanded, saying the word human as if it tasted bad. "Mixed martial arts with emphasis on Sambo and Krav Maga, Commander," she replied, keeping her voice steady. Vrax made a dismissive noise. "Meaningless terms. Show me." Bang! He activated the drone with a gesture. The machine immediately extended 4 limbs and began circling her. Natasha dropped into a fighting stance, weight-balanced, hands up. The drone attacked with surprising speed, one arm sweeping toward her head. Natasha ducked, deflected a second strike with her forearm, then countered with a front kick that connected solidly with the drone's central mass. The machine absorbed the impact and adapted instantly, changing its attack pattern. For 3 minutes, Natasha defended, countered, and attacked. The drone was fast and strong, but predictable once she identified its patterns. She landed several solid hits and avoided most of its strikes, though one caught her shoulder with enough force to make her wince. When Vrax finally deactivated the drone, she was breathing hard but still standing, undefeated. "Adequate," he grunted, which from his tone seemed like high praise. Next. David performed well too, showcasing Earth's other combat strengths. As the last cadet completed their assessment, Vrax paced before them, clearly unimpressed with the overall display. Pathetic. Even the best among you would last seconds against a real enemy. His eyes fixed on a trembling Tellurian cadet. "Especially you, Graz. I've seen dying star slugs with better reflexes." The insectoid cadet's antennae drooped visibly. "Tomorrow we begin actual training. Prepare yourselves for pain." Vrax turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. The strongest of each species, step forward." There was a moment of confusion before cadets began stepping forward. From some species, the choice was obvious. From others, cadets exchanged looks before one reluctantly advanced. Natasha stepped forward as the human representative. In combat demonstrations, you against me. Now. Vrax's mandibles spread in what might have been a Chronaxian smile. Don't worry. I'll be gentle. The first demonstration was brief and brutal. A muscular Doraxian named Krell charged Vrax with confidence that evaporated the moment the commander caught his fist mid-punch. 3 seconds later, Krell was pinned to the mat, conceding defeat. One by one, the strongest cadets faced Vrax. None lasted more than 30 seconds. Most were dispatched with casual ease, the commander barely using 2 of his 4 arms. He was toying with them, establishing dominance. When Natasha's turn came, she approached the mat with appropriate caution. Vrax loomed over her, his armored exoskeleton making him appear even larger. She knew Chronaxians were strong. Their homeworld had approximately 1.8 times Earth's gravity. Vrax was exceptional, even by their standards. "Ready, tiny pink creature?" he asked, mandibles twitching with amusement. "Ready, Commander," she replied, dropping into her stance. Vrax didn't bother with a fighting posture. He simply stood there, 2 arms crossed over his chest, the other 2 hanging relaxed at his sides. The message was clear: you're not worth the effort. Natasha circled cautiously, looking for openings while staying out of his considerable reach. Chronaxians were powerful but not known for speed or flexibility. If she could. Vrax moved with shocking quickness, closing the distance between them in a single step. One massive hand swung toward her face in what would have been a devastating slap had it connected. Natasha ducked under it, rolling away to create distance again. "At least you have reflexes," Vrax commented, sounding mildly surprised. "But most species freeze when a Chronaxian attacks." She didn't respond, concentrating instead on her footwork as she circled again. The other cadets watched in silence, many having already experienced Vrax's overwhelming strength firsthand. This time when Vrax attacked, Natasha timed her response perfectly. As his arm swung around, she stepped inside his guard, using his momentum against him to execute a perfect throw. For a brief moment, the massive Chronaxian was airborne. Then reality reasserted itself. Vrax twisted in midair, landing on his feet with a grace that belied his size. His yellow eyes fixed on Natasha with new interest. "Clever," he said, "but cleverness without power is useless." He attacked again, this time using all 4 arms in a complex pattern designed to overwhelm. Natasha blocked, dodged, and countered where possible, but she was clearly outmatched. A glancing blow to her ribs sent pain shooting through her chest, but she managed to stay on her feet. "Enough playing," Vrax announced. "Time to end this." His right upper arm shot out, faster than before, aimed directly at her face. Natasha tried to dodge, but Vrax had anticipated her movement. The back of his hand connected with her cheek, snapping her head to the side. The sound of the slap echoed through the suddenly silent training hall. Natasha staggered but didn't fall. A trickle of blood ran from the corner of her mouth. Vrax turned away dismissively. "Weak, like all your kind." The words ignited something in Natasha. A combination of pain, humiliation, and pure human stubbornness crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. As Vrax began to walk away, she moved. Her hand shot out, fingers wrapping around Vrax's retreating wrist. With precise application of leverage and pressure, she twisted. The crack was loud and distinct. Vrax's exoskeleton at the wrist joint shattered under her grip. The Chronaxian commander froze, then slowly turned back to face her. The training hall was deathly silent, every cadet staring in disbelief. "You broke my wrist," Vrax said, his voice a mixture of pain, shock, and something else. Something that sounded almost like respect. Natasha maintained her grip, aware that she had just potentially ended her career before it began. Attacking a superior officer was grounds for immediate expulsion, possibly imprisonment. But Vrax didn't call for security. Instead, a strange rumbling sound emerged from his throat, building in volume until it filled the hall. He was laughing. 4 seconds, he announced, looking around at the stunned cadets. It took the human 4 seconds to identify my weak point and exploit it. He flexed his injured wrist, wincing slightly. The joint will heal by morning. He turned his full attention back to Natasha, all 4 eyes focused intently on her face. Perhaps there is more to your species than I thought, human Kovalev. His mandibles clacked together. Tomorrow, you will show me what other surprises you hide beneath that fragile skin. As Vrax stomped from the training hall, nursing his injured wrist, whispers erupted among the cadets. Natasha stood motionless, still processing what had just happened. She had assaulted a commanding officer, a legendary Chronaxian warrior, and, instead of punishment, she'd earned. What? Interest? Respect? David approached cautiously. Holy shit, Nat, he whispered. You realize you just became a legend, right? No one has ever landed a hit on Commander Vrax during training, let alone broken his freaking exoskeleton. Natasha touched her cheek where Vrax had slapped her. It was already swelling. Yeah, she replied quietly. But something tells me tomorrow's training is going to be hell. She had no idea how right she was. Natasha woke before the first bell, her cheek throbbing where Vrax had struck her. The medical unit had offered to accelerate the healing, but she'd declined. The purple-yellow bruise was a badge of honor now, proof that she'd stood her ground against the legendary Commander Vrax Tundar, and broken his wrist in the process. She groaned, pressing her face into her pillow. What had she been thinking? Earth had only joined the Galactic Alliance 2 years ago. Humans were still proving themselves worthy of membership. And she had assaulted a commanding officer on her first day of training. You awake? David's voice came through her door communicator. Better hurry. Word spreading about yesterday. Everyone wants to see what happens next. Perfect, just perfect. 20 minutes later, Natasha joined the other cadets in the mess hall, trying to ignore the stares and whispers that followed her. News traveled fast on the station. Apparently, breaking a Chronaxian commander's wrist was noteworthy even beyond their training cohort. Is it true? A small, furry cadet named Pix sidled up to her as she collected her breakfast ration. Did you really crack his shell with your bare hands? It was just the wrist joint, Natasha mumbled, moving along the food line. And he slapped me first. Incredible, Pix said, eyes wide. Chronaxian exoskeletons can withstand direct plasma fire. How did you know where to strike? Natasha hadn't known, exactly. It had been pure instinct, that perfect moment when training, anger, and opportunity aligned. But before she could answer, an alarm blared throughout the mess hall. All cadets report to Training Arena 7 immediately, came the automated announcement. Full combat gear required. Worried glances were exchanged across the hall. Arena 7 was the largest combat facility, typically used for multi-squad exercises. Not first-day training. He's going to kill us all, groaned a Tellurian cadet, antennae quivering. Especially you, human Kovalev. Relax, Graz, Natasha said, though her own stomach was tying itself in knots. If he wanted me dead, he would have crushed my skull yesterday. Unless he wanted an audience, David muttered. Chronaxians are big on public examples. With that comforting thought, they hurried to gear up. Arena 7 was cavernous, with high ceilings and multiple terrain configurations that could be activated for different scenarios. Currently, it was set to open field, no cover, nowhere to hide. Just a vast expanse of synthetic turf under the harsh lights. Commander Vrax stood in the center, 4 arms behind his back, looking like a statue carved from dark granite. His injured wrist showed no signs of damage. Chronaxian healing capabilities were apparently just as impressive as their strength. Form up, he barked as the cadets filed in. 3 lines. Now. They scrambled to obey, forming 3 ranks as ordered. Natasha found herself in the front line, directly in Vrax's line of sight. She stood at attention, eyes forward, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. Yesterday, Vrax began, pacing slowly before them. You demonstrated your species' native combat techniques. Some were adequate, most were pitiful. His yellow eyes fixed briefly on Natasha. One was unexpected. He stopped pacing and faced them directly. Today you learned why technique without teamwork is useless. Why individual skill without unit cohesion leads to death. He gestured to the far end of the arena, where a large door was sliding open. Your opponents have arrived. Through the door marched 12 combat droids, not training drones, but fully weaponized battle units used for advanced military exercises. Each stood 2 meters tall, armored and equipped with various non-lethal, but extremely painful weapons. These Mark VI combat units are programmed to function as a coordinated tactical team, Vrax explained. You will face them as a unit. Your objective is simple: disable all 12 droids. Their objective is equally simple: incapacitate all of you. But we haven't trained together yet, protested a Vorlex cadet. We don't have unit tactics. Precisely, Vrax said, mandibles clicking. In real combat, you don't always choose your allies. Sometimes you must adapt or die. He glanced at the time display on his wrist guard. You have 2 minutes to develop a strategy. Then, combat begins. With that, he strode to the side of the arena, leaving 20 stunned cadets staring at 12 lethal-looking combat droids. This is insane, hissed David. Those are military-grade units. We're going to get slaughtered. Natasha looked around at her fellow cadets, a diverse collection of species with different strengths, weaknesses, and combat styles. None had worked together before. Some were physically powerful. Others were quick or agile. A few looked like they'd never seen combat outside of simulations. But they all had something to contribute. Listen up, she said, raising her voice. We need to organize fast. Krell, Zorak, Jackson, you're our heaviest hitters. You'll be our front line. The Doraxian, Grakian, and Peslak cadets nodded, stepping forward. Pix, Talia, Ren, you 3 have the best speed. You'll flank and harass. The smaller, quicker species grouped together, looking determined. The rest of us formed the main assault team. Natasha looked at the remaining cadets. David and I will coordinate. Target the same droid together, don't spread out attacks. Take them down one at a time. Why should we follow your plan, human? Demanded a spindly Quasarian. Because you got lucky once against the commander? Because we have 90 seconds left to plan, and no one else is talking, Natasha shot back. Got a better idea? Share it now. The Quasarian's color membrane flickered with embarrassment, but he said nothing. All right then, Natasha continued. Remember, these droids will be coordinated. They'll protect each other and focus fire. We need to do the same. Stick to your assigned groups, communicate. And whatever you do, don't get isolated. As the cadets quickly arranged themselves according to her impromptu plan, Natasha caught Vrax watching her from the sidelines. His expression was unreadable, but there was a stillness to his posture that suggested intense focus. Time's up, cadets, he called out. Combat begins now. The droids moved with mechanical precision, spreading out in a classic pincer formation. Their programming was sophisticated. This wasn't a mindless charge, but a tactical approach designed to divide and conquer. Hold the line, Natasha called to the front group. Let them come to us. Flankers, stay hidden until my mark. The two forces converged at the center of the arena. The first exchange was chaotic energy pulses from the droids' stun weapons crisscrossing with the cadets' strikes. 2 cadets went down almost immediately, struck by precision shots from the droids' rear line. They're targeting our weaker members, David yelled, dodging a stun blast. Shield teams, protect the wounded. Remarkably, the cadets responded, adapting to the shifting battle. The 3 largest aliens formed a protective wall around their fallen comrades, while the faster species darted in and out, landing quick strikes before retreating. Natasha found herself face to face with the lead droid, a heavily armored unit with multiple weapon attachments. It analyzed her briefly, then struck with calculated force. She dodged the first blow but caught the second on her shoulder, sending a jolt of pain down her arm. "Weak point at the neck joint," she called out, having spotted a gap in the droid's armor. Aim for the connection between head and body. Across the battlefield, cadets began targeting the vulnerable areas she'd identified. One droid fell, then another. But the remaining units adapted quickly, protecting their weak points and intensifying their attacks. "They're learning our patterns," David shouted, landing beside her after a rolling dive to avoid a stun blast. "We need to change tactics." Natasha nodded, mind racing. The droids were programmed to counter predictable attacks. They needed something unpredictable, something the machines couldn't anticipate. "Everyone switch opponents," she ordered. "Random targets, random attacks. Don't establish patterns." The change in tactics created momentary confusion among the cadets, but it threw the droids' prediction algorithms into disarray. A Vorlex cadet managed to disable a third droid, then a fourth fell to a coordinated strike from Pix and Talia. But the remaining 8 units regrouped with disturbing efficiency, forming a defensive circle that repelled all attacks. 3 more cadets went down under concentrated fire. "We're losing ground," David panted, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. "Those center units are too well protected." Natasha studied the droids' formation, looking for weaknesses. Something about their defensive posture seemed familiar. "It's a Chronaxian turtle formation," she realized suddenly. "They're mimicking elite Chronaxian tactics." David looked at her. "And how does that help us?" "Because I studied Chronaxian battle tactics before coming here," she replied, "a plan forming. And every formation has a counter." She quickly gathered the remaining able-bodied cadets. "New plan. We need to create an opening in their defense. Krell, I need you to draw their fire. Can you handle that?" The massive Doraxian nodded grimly. "Give me covering fire. The rest of you, form 2 teams. When Krell creates the distraction, Team 1 attacks from the left, Team 2 from the right. Target the rear units first. They're coordinating the defense." The plan was desperate, but it was all they had. Krell charged forward, roaring a Doraxian battle cry that echoed through the arena. The droids responded predictably, focusing their fire on the immediate threat. "Now!" Natasha yelled. The 2 strike teams hit the droid formation from opposite sides, exactly as she'd outlined. The machines tried to respond to the 3-pronged attack, but their programming couldn't prioritize effectively. Gaps appeared in their defense. Natasha drove straight into one such gap, targeting a command unit she'd identified by its distinctive antenna array. With a series of strikes to its vulnerable joints, she managed to disable its primary systems. The effect was immediate. 2 nearby droids faltered, their movements becoming uncoordinated. David and a Peslak cadet took advantage, taking them down in quick succession. The battle shifted. What had been a coordinated droid defense became a disjointed series of individual engagements. And in one-on-one combat, even the advanced machines couldn't match the adaptability of organic fighters. One by one, the remaining droids fell. When the last unit dropped, sparking and disabled, an exhausted silence fell over the arena. Of the 20 cadets who had begun the exercise, only 8 remained standing. The rest lay scattered across the battlefield, stunned, wounded, but alive. Vrax stepped forward, surveying the scene with those unblinking yellow eyes. 12 combat droids disabled, he announced, 60% casualty rate among defending forces. His mandibles clicked together. In actual combat, this would be considered an acceptable outcome against superior numbers. Natasha wasn't sure if that was praise or criticism. She was too busy helping David to his feet, her own body aching from multiple impacts. "Cadet Kovalev," Vrax called. "Step forward." Natasha froze. Here it came punishment for yesterday's insubordination, delayed but not forgotten. She straightened her shoulders and walked forward, standing at attention before the towering Chronaxian. You took command, Vrax stated, without authority, without rank. Yes, Commander, she replied, keeping her voice steady. Why? The question caught her off guard. She had expected accusations, not inquiry. Someone had to, sir, she said simply. We had limited time and needed a unified approach. Vrax studied her, head tilted slightly. And your tactical assessment? The identification of the Chronaxian defense pattern? Where did that come from? I studied Alliance military history before applying to the Academy, sir. Chronaxian battle tactics are particularly well documented due to their effectiveness. I see. Vrax turned to address all the cadets, those standing and those now being treated by medical drones. Today's lesson was about adaptation and unity. In the field, circumstances change. Enemies adapt. Plans fail. What determines survival is not individual strength, but collective response. He gestured to the disabled droids. These units were programmed with advanced tactical algorithms designed to counter standard Alliance protocols. They should have prevailed against untrained cadets. His gaze swept across the group. Instead, you achieved victory by doing what machines cannot, improvising, adapting, trusting unfamiliar allies. He paused. This is the true strength of the Alliance. Not uniformity, but diversity harnessed toward a common goal. Natasha could hardly believe what she was hearing. Was this the same Vrax who had dismissed her entire species as weak just yesterday? Medical teams will treat your injuries, Vrax continued. Rest cycle begins in 1 hour. Tomorrow's training starts at 0600. His mandibles clicked. Be prepared for something more challenging. As the commander turned to leave, Natasha called out, "Sir." Vrax paused, looking back at her. "Cadet Kovalev? Thank you for the lesson, sir." Mia. For a moment, Vrax seemed surprised by the comment. Then his mandibles spread in what might have been a Chronaxian smile. "Yesterday you taught me one as well, human." He flexed his wrist meaningfully. "I will not underestimate your species again." Later that evening, Admiral Zoll found Vrax in the officers' lounge, reviewing footage from the day's exercise on a holographic display. "I heard about today's training session," the Admiral said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Rather intense for first-day cadets, wouldn't you say?" Vrax grunted, not looking up from the display. "They survived. More than survived, according to the reports. They actually defeated a full squadron of Mark VIs." Zoll's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, quite impressive. Especially the leadership displayed by the human female. Vrax finally looked up. "You knew, didn't you, about the human's capabilities?" "I had suspicions," Zoll admitted. "Their test scores were intriguing. But potential is meaningless without proper guidance." His middle eyes narrowed slightly. "How's the wrist, by the way?" Vrax flexed his right arm, the repaired exoskeleton now stronger than before. Fully functional. "And your assessment of human Kovalev?" The Chronaxian commander was silent for a moment, considering. "She lacks physical power. Her endurance is limited. Her sensory capabilities are inferior to most Alliance species." He tapped a claw against the table. "But she adapts faster than any cadet I've seen, identifies weaknesses, exploits opportunities, and somehow inspires others to follow her into battle, despite having no established authority. Qualities of a natural leader," Zoll observed. "Perhaps." Vrax's yellow eyes returned to the holographic display, where Natasha could be seen organizing the cadets into their battle formation. Or perhaps simply qualities of her species. Humans evolved on a planet of apex predators and constant environmental changes. Adaptation isn't just their strength, it's how they survived long enough to reach the stars. "Does this mean you're reconsidering your position on Earth's inclusion in the Alliance?" Vrax made a dismissive gesture with his lower left hand. "One promising cadet doesn't change the reality that humans are physically inferior to most spacefaring species." "And yet," Zoll said mildly, one human cadet broke the wrist of the Alliance's most decorated Chronaxian commander. In 4 seconds, I believe the report said, Vrax's mandibles clacked in irritation. A momentary lapse in judgment on my part. Of course, Zol agreed, rising from his seat. I look forward to reading your training reports over the coming weeks, Commander. They should be educational. After the Admiral departed, Vrax sat alone, replaying the footage of the day's battle. He paused on an image of Natasha directing the final assault against the droids, her face determined despite the exhaustion evident in her posture. Humans were undeniably fragile by Chronaxian standards. Their bones broke easily. Their skin tore at the slightest pressure. They lacked natural weapons or defensive capabilities. By all logical assessments, they should have been prey species, not spacefaring conquerors. And yet, somehow, they had survived their brutal homeworld. They had developed technology to compensate for their physical limitations. They had expanded beyond their system, despite having the most primitive FTL drives in the Alliance. And one of them had broken his wrist when he'd made the mistake of assuming weakness equated to vulnerability. Vrax closed the display and rose to his full height, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. The next 60 rotation cycles would be interesting indeed. The human needed proper testing, not the watered-down exercises typically given to new Alliance members, but real challenges that would push her to her limits. Not to break her, as he had initially intended, but to see just how far this seemingly fragile species could truly go. After all, any species that could produce warriors capable of breaking Chronaxian exoskeletons with their bare hands deserved proper evaluation. For the first time since receiving this assignment, Commander Vrax Tundar was actually looking forward to tomorrow's training session. Perhaps babysitting wasn't the right word for this duty after all. Perhaps discovery was more appropriate. His mandibles spread in a full Chronaxian grin as he headed toward the Training Design Center. He had some modifications to make to tomorrow's exercises. The human had surprised him once. He was counting on her to do it again.